Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And for the last number of days, a lot of things have come about whilst once again reading about Chris. Most of them seeming to fall into one of two things. The idea that Chris is talking, for the most part, absolute nonsense. Now, to be fair, we know this has been a thing for Chris for years. That's not. There's no two ways about it. What is consistent, however, is Chris's deterioration in being able to make any sense. It's kind of been a bit of a running joke that I've often mentioned that Chris is continuously is showing all the classic telltale signs of what we have dubbed losing the plot, and Chris becomes less and less coherent and is almost completely on the verge of losing all power of rational thought and logic. Complete and utter nonsense spews from. But I think the reason for this isn't just because of some deteriorating mental illness that is like slipped under the public's gaze. I think it's also down to the fact that Chris has no idea what he's doing or what he's even talking about. Now with that being said, and what I can only call a damning assessment, even this early on into the video, let's talk about Chris's ideas about random access humor. Now, first of all, I just want to preface this. Comedy is very, very subjective. There's it sometimes I think it all comes down to whether or not you out there watching this, whether you think something is funny, and you have all the rights in the world to say whether you think something is funny or whether something is not funny. You understand what I mean? Ultimately, you can find something hilarious and somebody somewhere might have a very, very different opinion. Now, I'll go a little bit further into detail because recently I watched a little comedy sketch show called Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping. The first comedy sketch show that David Mitchell and Robert Webb have done together in 15 years. Now, when I did my videos about this series, I watched all 6 episodes, and I'm gonna have to tell you guys, the word to use to describe that series is quite frankly surprising, because it seemed as if that literally not it literally came across as though they had no idea what they because I could sort of hazard a guess as to what the jokes were and what they were trying to convey and what they were trying to do, but honestly, the entire program is an absolute trifle of problems. Chief among which is that about 80% of the jokes all the things they did I just did not find funny. And when a comedy skit show or a comedy show in general it is not funny, that's an issue. That's a pretty big issue. With that being said, however, and there's a lot of things to be said about Mitchell and Webb not helping because oh my god, is that show just dreadful. Chris's attempts at comedy are not exactly what you would call stellar either. But let's get into why that is, shall we? So let's get into that. Random access. Noun. 1. Computing, type of storage access where arbitrary data can be accessed as opposed to sequential access. See also random access memory. Adjective. 2. Quickism. Non-sequential, lacking any coherence. Humor. Noun. 1. Something funny. 2. Quickism. Something not funny, but which can be made funny when accessed randomly. See random access. Yeah, you see right here. This is the absolute bona fide example of why. Because I have no idea what this is. I'm assuming the idea is that it's so completely incoherent and so completely absurd and random that there's something quite. However, Chris can't even master the element of surprise because I have no idea what's going on. Like there's got to be some sort of connection or something that we can hazard a guess as to what they're trying to do. Or it's but I'm only mentioning this because you may remember I studied comedy for a year when I was 17, And unfortunately, I don't want to paraphrase it too much, but unfortunately, Chris could have done with taking a few classes because honestly, I think even I could do probably random access humor better, but I don't encourage it. Is what I'm saying. Random access humor is Chris's terminology for his tendency to blurt out whatever random thought enters his head, regardless of its relevance to a given situation. More traditional literary analysts might describe this as the literary device of non sequitur. Others might suggest he misinterpreted the randomly generated humor bit from VeggieTales. The humor part of the phrase stems from Chris's assumption that if he says something completely irrelevant and random, then it is automatically funny. When most of the time it's completely nonsensical and infuriatingly unfunny. At this moment, the strongest portrayal of Chris's random access humor can be found in the Quick Flying Elephants video, which, if they're gonna be putting in here, I have to censor because Chris does the entire video naked. It's it's an experience that I don't really want people to see because, well, for reasons. Like many of Chris's strange mannerisms, this is likely linked to his autism. A common symptom among autistics is echolalia, where they constantly repeat the phrases from their favorite television shows, movies, and video games, regardless of whether they fit the current situation. Chris just so happens to take this to ridiculous levels. Ironically enough, Chris's random access humor is often unoriginal, which will probably be one of the easier things to do for an idea like this. However, jokes are mostly taken from adult swim shows, Monty Python's Flying Circus, Family Guy, or even shows like Ed, Edd and Eddy and Samurai Pizza Cats, taking from them completely out of context. When really, quite a lot of those jokes, to be honest, they would probably work in context. Chris doesn't really understand the concept of context either, really, does he, when you think about it? He fails to understand the purpose of these jokes. For example, Monty Python's comedy was sculpted specifically to satirize British culture of their era and not simply random for the sake of being random. This shows that even when Chris doesn't have to make any sense, he still has a hard time coming up with original material. In fact, I'll give you guys a very quick example about from Monty Python, just in case people don't really believe it. They did this one sketch called the insurance sketch, in which it features a completely sleazy, completely dubious, and absolutely rip-off insurance agent, in which he basically says, "Well, you see here, Mr. Robbins, you got here right under." This is me trying to do my Eric Idle voice, by the way. "Well, it seems here that no part of your claim will be paid. Instead, we are rolling out a completely new service." "Oh yeah, what's that?" "A nude lady." "Nude lady? Oh yes, sir. But what about my car? It was just standing still in the driveway and the truck came at me at 40 miles an hour and smashed it." "Ah, well, you see here, Mr. Poppins, we got it right here in the insurance. It's all, it's all absolutely bona fide right here. There is absolutely no guarantee or promise whatsoever that any part of your claim will be paid. Also, how's the nude lady?" "Oh, well, whatever, she's fine." The point of the whole insurance sketch is that there will be some people who will absolutely make the most. First of all, why did this guy go to this insurance broker in the first place? When who on earth would sign up to an insurance claim if they get involved in an accident and it wasn't their fault and they simply will not be paid out? Who would be stupid enough to sign up to something like that? And why would he be stupid enough to accept? "Oh, we'll give you a nude lady just as a form of compensation." There's actually quite a lot more to the sketch, if I'm being honest, but I think it's out there if you guys want to see it. There's also a skit they do literally right before the insurance sketch called the architect sketch, which ironically has a little bit of darker undertones, considering if you lived anywhere near the Grenfell Tower circa 2017. Just watch that sketch alone because it's kind of, if Monty Python predicted the future all the way back in 1971, believe you me, they were not far from it. because it was a sketch literally involving architects wanting to be Freemasons by making incredibly unsafe blocks of flats. Yeah, I'm not joking. That was absolutely what they did. And again, if you don't know what the Grenfell Tower fire was, you might want to look into it. Just putting it out there. With that being said, however, do you think Chris? No, let's keep rolling. While Chris is original, it's mostly in the form of childish rhymes or wordplays that make Lewis Carroll roll in his grave. His sex joke, anyone? This is due to Chris being a somewhat concrete thinker, having a tough time understanding abstract concepts, including humour. Because of his linear thinking, he has a tendency to take jokes literally. E.g., Bob told Chris a joke about Obama painting the White House black if he won the 2008 election. One occasion of note is a line in Sonichu issue 2, wherein Sonichu, after being commanded to retreat, retorts with, "You don't have to tell me twice, but during the Stone Age." According to Comics' official video book, the joke is that you really need to tell those cavemen twice. But Chris fails to realize that as the joke is written in the comic, there is literally nothing to interpret as funny by any standard. This isn't too surprising, however, since Chris has never shown interest in clarity for the audience and simply makes the comics for his own sake, and neither for the consideration of the audience, the distributor, the editor, the agent, his parents, Michael Snyder, people who might actually have an interest in Chris's otherwise furious demands to become famous at the expense of good taste, clarity, and sanity. Moving on, the randomosity is also questionable, in that the allegedly random jokes are also frequently repeated. Chris keeps retelling the same jokes that weren't funny in the first place. For example, if you are a confused foreigner who has no idea what Nantucket is, you will Google it soon. Chris has specifically stated he actually fears things that are beyond his control, a fear which falls very nicely in line with his autism. Chris also uses the term random access memory, which is basically when he says something completely random without the intent of being funny. He tends to use these when a conversation is not going in a direction he wants it to, and hopes that interjecting this other thought line will briefly distract him from that. Well, just like a computer, my brain is random. It picks up memories at random. I cannot simply access them sometimes, even though most of the time I can. But sometimes I can't, and they come back to me at random. Mad. Absolute mad. Nonsense. Absolute bullshit, Chris. Also, let's just because again, I kind of want to bring up the comparison to Mitchell and Webb once again. Repeating the same jokes over and over again. Now, it's no secret, ladies and gentlemen, that people who write comedy, they sometimes have to see the exact same joke for months on end, and by the time it finally gets out to the public, will it have the same sort of impact that it would when you will it live up to expectations, and will people find it as funny as what you used to think it was? It's a struggle. It's far harder than words could convey, but that's also probably why you need to have a serious think about it and take a look. I mean, one of the few recurring jokes they did in Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping is this segment called Sweary Aussie Drama, where the entire joke is that they're Australian and they swear a lot. That is that's the whole joke, and this goes on for. There's one skit of this in all 6 episodes. It's the only part of the show where there actually are recurring characters, if you can even call them that either. The reason why it's not funny is because, in my opinion, okay, we get it. The joke is that they're Australian and they swear a lot. That's the whole joke. It doesn't matter if they're trying to fight over who owns this farm because, well, that's not apparently what the focus is. The focus is that they're Australian and they swear a lot. Yeah, anyone who's ever seen Mitchell and Webber not helping, I think also would feel this sense of exasperation. Like, these guys used to be legendary in doing it. I mean, these were the guys who came up with, Cheezoid, Number Wang, and Remain Indoors. How on earth did we get to that stage? Then, of course, there were just some jokes that they did in that show which are completely exasperating, which I genuinely can't believe they did. Like, there's one skit in there that they did some sort of fake PSA in which it kind of sounded like they're bollocking the audience for no reason. It didn't feel like comedy. It felt like they were telling us off. Not that I'm suggesting Chris is better than those two, but what I am saying is that I will give Chris some credit when it comes to comedy. It leaves you on the edge of your seat because you're not entirely sure what Chris is going to do next, which is something, I guess. I don't know. Random ramblings. In November of 2007, in a misguided attempt to help Encyclopedia Dramatica to get to know him better and stop trolling him, Christian added the following to his ED page. Each brain in every person in the world is a computer, complete with infinite GB, RAM, emphasis on random, and our autistic hero is no exception. Here are some of the ramblings that can make him comparable to the TV talking styles of those robots, the Junkians, who got it from watching too much TV. Carrots are good for your eyes. Can it dial a phone? Uncle Spunky is a really funky monkey. Yellow is a mellow colour. All aboard, here we go, let's go somewhere else. I'm already bored and I'm not reading this. Moving on. Sex joke. Chris's sex joke is an overly long and painfully unfunny story that he has told whenever he wants to do or is asked to tell a joke and or prove he is much, much saltier than people expect. His first known use of the joke on the internet was when he put it on Encyclopedia Dramatica in November of 2007. He has repeated this joke in conversations with sweethearts, in one of his ED edits, and in a mumble chat. You may notice that if Chris wanted to make the joke work, then Chris should have ended the word with egg. However, he adds two extra sentences to the punchline that are completely pointless and incoherent, causing the joke to lose the little humour that it had. Some versions of the joke, however, change the names of the two characters to Dick and Jane and omit the balanced breakfast coda. A great anecdote. There was this married couple, George and Barbie, and they have been working at having children of their own. One night, George came home from work and he was tired. Barbie welcomed him home. Hi, honey, rough day. Yeah, George replied. I'm tired. Barbie said, well, why don't we go upstairs and we'll have some breakfast? Breakfast? George replied, at 9:30 in the evening. Barbie replied, sure, dear, you bring the milk, I'll get an egg. Later, they had a boy and a girl, junior bacon, and orange juice, all part of a balanced breakfast. I actually want to cut out my eyes for reading that. Holy God, that was bad. And that's Chris's idea of a great anecdote. If this article has proved to me anything, guys, is that I genuinely want to put my comedy ideas to print. I actually want to get my stuff out there just for reading this because, oh my God, that was painful. You know what? I think I might go and watch Monty Python actually on Netflix. Wow, that was rough, and I'm glad I didn't at any point go through this because, quite frankly, what is all of this? I don't care, and I am not reading it. So call this unprofessional or whatever you like. I am not sitting here for another second subjecting myself to this nonsense. This is the ramblings of somebody who tried to write out the entire passion of Jesus Christ, but they completely wrote it in shit. Yeah, What? I'll see you guys later at the next station. So, all aboard!